as you learn more about trauma, and especially as you learn more about the treatment of trauma, what you start learning is that the successful resolution of traumatic stress is pretty simple. There are some basic things that when they're accomplished, the trauma survivor is no longer symptomatic for PTSD, and that's exciting for our field. But juxtaposed to that is that it's also serious, and that people can and do commit suicide because they are suffering so much with traumatic stress. So what's really important for the folks that are watching this is that as you learn more and more about trauma and helping them more and being more and more in the context of people who are surviving, you just want to start watching out for some of the symptoms that I talked about, like nightmares, like people who are kind of giving intimation that they don't want to be around anymore, or that they are so depressed or demoralized they're not functioning, or that they can't concentrate. When you're starting to see those symptoms kind of coming forward in your discussions with a neighbor or a family member, you want to make sure that you put them in contact with somebody who is a mental health professional, somebody who is trained in the treatment of traumatic stress, so that they can get the full benefit of the resources that are available in our field. I want to walk you through a process that we developed under a grant from the Center for Disease Control back in 2002, I think, 2003, in Hillsborough County, and we started a community crisis response team, and trained 100 pastors, 100 mental health professionals, and 100 community volunteers to be part of this crisis support team that was part of the Emergency Operations Center. And anytime there was a declared disaster in Hillsborough County, we were called out to help with the kind of social support aspects of disaster. And we learned a lot about this process. And I want to share with you the way that we kind of synthesized all of that information to make an intervention that is conversational. And I call it the duck intervention, because you're doing a whole, the duck's underneath paddling. You're going to be underneath paddling, but on the surface, all you're doing is you're just having a conversation with the person who is a recent survivor, and how to use that conversation in a way that intentionally activates them towards healing, towards health, towards resilience, instead of doing something well-meaning but misguided and sending them into what we call in the field iatrogenesis, which is treatment-caused symptoms. We definitely don't want to do that, and so we've learned some stuff about how to do that with some degree of efficiency, and I'd like to share that with you. And the way that we developed this protocol is around an acronym that we call CASER, and it's C-A-S-E-R, and that stands for, that's 5 different activities that you are doing in just a kind of normal everyday conversation with the person that you are encountering at a disaster or some experience in the church, a shooting, any kind of those critical incident events. It's how to have that kind of conversation, and we do that with contact, assessment, stabilization, education, and referral. And this is a one-on-one process. And what we've also learned about good services is that group diffusings, actually, and that's for later learning, but a group process can be helpful for folks who are recent survivors of trauma. 36, 48, 72 hours out, it can be a useful intervention, but you never do it first. You do the individual stuff so that you're doing this individual triage, and you're checking out, do these people need more than just a group experience? Are they safe? Are they healthy? Is there some physical problem that they're having that I need to make sure that they get medical attention? So you want to be doing the one-on-ones first, and then moving on to something else into that referral process. So what I want to do is I want to take 5 minutes or so and walk you through each one take 3 or 4 or 5 minutes and walk you through each of those 5 stages and what happens in a CASER conversational intervention with somebody who is a recent survivor. So the first part of that contact is by far the single most important thing to have happen. I had an opportunity to work with some international folks who are specialists with acute stress. And one of the things that Reuven Gall, who runs the Carmel Institute in Carmel, Israel, one of the things that he found in working with folks is the first encounter that a trauma survivor has with somebody that they perceive to be an authority after the event has a whole lot of, it's a hugely powerful mitigating factor about how well they recover or how far down, how far they go into symptoms. That there's a lot that we can do simply by the way that we frame up what's just happened to the person. So what we want to do is the contact process is before the single most important thing, and let me underscore this with 10 lines. The most important thing that you ever do in the context of anybody who is a survivor, and what I would say is any counseling or pastoral situation ever for the rest of your life, the single most important intervention that you can do for that person and also for your own resilience, and that's nice because it's recursive, is that you start and maintain your interactions with them inside of a body that is relaxed, that you are in a parasympathetically dominant nervous system, that you are soft-muscled body. And I want you to just get the importance of that. I want you to just take a second and think through your own life. What happens with you when you are around somebody who is anxious, that you become anxious? That's what happens when we are around people who are dysregulated, people who are afraid, people who have had recent trauma, is that when one person in a situation becomes anxious, and if you're in a line and a person starts kind of fidgeting, what you can watch happening is that everybody starts fidgeting. It is contagious. Conversely, as you are in the context of somebody who is relaxed, somebody who's chilled, you find yourself settling down and being much more comfortable in the context of that person as you're talking to them, as you're sitting on a bus with them, as you're riding on an airplane with them. You are much more comfortable if you're sitting across from somebody who is relaxed and self-possessed. And so that's what we want to bring to trauma survivors. Absolutely I engage with them, I am in a completely relaxed body. So their very first experience with me is they look up and we've got these little mirror neurons in our brain and we read people before anything verbal ever happens. We get a felt sense of people. And when a trauma survivor sees you in a relaxed body, there's an immediate signal to their autonomic nervous system, this person is not a danger. And the more that I stay with them in the context of them, and I stay in a relaxed body, what I'm doing is I'm leaching that charge out of them. If I'm doing a 15 or 20 minute conversation with them, as I stay in a relaxed body, what I've just watched happen, I watched it happen in New York, I watched it happen in New Orleans, I watched it happen in lots of different contexts. As I engage with a survivor who is really scared and who's really uptight, as I stay in a relaxed body, you just watch incrementally this intensity begin to flow out of the person, and they come back to themselves and they begin to have a rational conversation, and we start planning about how they're going to take care of themselves as they go forward from here. And it's really almost magical process. That is the crucial skill. And let me add to that, the cool thing that happens for you while you're doing that is you are maximizing your neocortical functioning, so that you are intelligent and creative and compassionate and empathetic. You're able to be who and how you want to be. And one more added benefit of that is your maximal level of resilience. You are also kind of becoming Teflon. The more in a relaxed body that you stay, the less you are going to be impacted by the secondary traumatic stress, either environmental of being on site and seeing a whole lot of stuff happening, or in hearing some of the narrative and witnessing some of the things that this person sitting across from you is sharing with you. You're going to remain maximally resilient. So you can do this for a long time without getting sick from your work. So, there's just layers of the importance of, before you ever meet a person who is a recent survivor, that you take a minute, and for those of you, for those people of faith, it's a really good time to spend, 60 seconds, 30 seconds in prayer and kind of just soften into your mission and what it is that you're about to do, and do that and go forward in a body that is relaxed. And then from there, what we want to do is that we want to make contact with the person who is the survivor. And what's a really nice little gambit is that, anytime that I have a go pack, and anytime that I get called out to work in a disaster or critical incident context, I take water with me. And it's just a really nice tool to be able to, have a bottle of water in your hand. And the first thing that I do is I step to the person and say, "Hi, my name's Eric Gentry, and I'm helping out here today." I don't introduce myself as Dr. Gentry. I don't have on any kind of distinguishing, white coat or, badges or anything else, unless the situation requires me to be credentialed. Other than that, I'm no different. I am interacting, and I make this really important. This is a peer-to-peer interaction. This is not a professional to a patient. This is a peer-to-peer. And while I'm doing this with a person today, they may be doing it for me tomorrow. So it is clearly a peer-to-peer interaction. So I shake hands with them if they are able to tolerate that and they're willing to. I reach out my hand and say, "Hi, my name's Eric, and I'm helping out here today." Another thing about that, Virginia Satir, who is a famous American psychotherapist, family systems, and she talked about how important it is to match holes. That you want to be on the same level that physiologically with the person that you're interacting with. So if they're sitting down, you want to sit down. If they're sitting on the ground, you want to sit down with them. If they're standing up, you're standing up, so that you kind of meet with them wherever they are in terms of proximity. And once I step into their space and shake their hand, then I want to step back a little bit so that I'm giving them some space and some proximity to be able to intervene. "Hi, my name's Eric. I'm helping out here today." And then I shut up. This is a hugely important piece of this. There's been, as I told you, there's been a lot of people that have said, back in the 90s, that people need to tell their story after trauma. And so that these folks would go into bank robberies or disaster context, and they would have people, would elicit from them the narrative of what had happened to them. And some got better, and some it made worse. There were other folks that said, no, we want to make sure that the person is not telling their story, that they are kind of suppressing it and getting on with their lives, and we don't want to draw any of that out because it may go away all by itself, which that happens a lot. But what's happened with some people is that metastasized, and it got worse and worse and worse, and they ended up being really symptomatic. So what we know today is that we don't know what's best. So we don't want to drive this process. We want to instead be in a passive role. So if the person has a desire and they want to talk about what's come up, and then I want to listen. And so they bring it forward, and I just listen, and I nod, and I make mental prompts. Well, that's interesting. How did you do that? Mostly though, I'm not saying anything. I am just relaxing my body, and I'm nodding. And occasionally I am rejoining them with a kind of indication of their resilience and how they did a good job of being able to handle that. And I certainly want to address any specific questions that they ask me, but if they come forward want to tell their story of what just happened, I just want to listen, and that's it. But conversely, if somebody is just kind of buttoned up and they got their arms crossed and they're a little bit standoffish, then I am not eliciting from them what's just happened to you. So, and what I've found, as going back to the water bottle, is that it's just really nice to kind of shake their hand and here, would you like a bottle of water? And most people will take it. Even if they don't drink it, they'll take it. And it's a nice kind of little gambit to just break that ice and to help people to kind of settle into that you're going to sit with them and you're going to talk with them for a little bit. So, that's the contact part of just, as I said earlier, that people after a trauma, they have a tendency to withdraw because a lot of these people have never experienced trauma before, and they don't know how to be. They're scared. They know something terrible's happened, and they don't know how to cope with this. So that there's a natural instinctual tendency to become insular and withdraw from contact with other people. And what we found is that the more people withdraw, the more their symptoms perseverate, the quicker that folks can get back engaged in their social connections and in their activities of daily living. That is highly correlated with quicker recovery and less symptoms. So that's what we're doing, is that we are making human-to-human contact. We are bridging that severance that just happened to the person from their community, from themselves, from their loved ones, that they don't know how to be now. And what we're doing is that we are connecting back with them and inviting them to rejoin humankind. And become back part of the society. And I think that's a really important function that we do. And I don't want to understate its importance. So we don't want to kind of let that, blow through this first 60 seconds in effort to try to get some kind of techniques done. We want to be really mindful and regal and intentional about the way that we are connecting with this person who's just survived some pretty incredible things, and take a moment to just recognize what a privilege it is to get to sit in this seat, to get to sit here with this person, to be this instrument. And if you are a person of faith, you get to be this instrument of God's love, and that's a pretty cool thing to get to do. So that is and that sets the stage for everything else. Failing that first section, the rest of the stuff just won't make any difference, because the people won't want to listen to you. They're going to want to get rid of you. So it's pretty essential that we make good, solid contact, and that and in transitioning out of the C into the A, which is from contact to assessment, one of the things that has been demonstrated to be a really helpful ameliorative, we call it in the research, we call those protective factors, things which lessen the amount of PTSD symptoms that a person's going to have, and that is connecting them with indigenous support. And so a really nice thing, it's not going to happen 100% of the time, but the more that you get used to doing this, it feels a little bit awkward at the beginning, but it's a really important thing to do. And what it does is it sets up a nice frame for this case or process. And one of the things that I ask just everybody that I ever do this is, who can I call to come be with you today? Because it's not a good idea for you to be alone for the rest of the day. It's a much better idea for you to have somebody that could drive down here and that could be with you and that could support you as you transition back into your life. So who is somebody that I could call? Do you have a spouse? Do you have a family member? Do you have a friend, a coworker? Is there somebody that I could call to come down here and to be with you? And you got my cell phone in my pocket, and I pull it out and I say, well, let's go ahead and call them and invite them and let them know what's happened, and then I'll sit with you while they're on their way down here. And so that sets up a really nice frame for you to have the next 15 or 20 minutes or however long to be able to talk with them and to do the rest of this process. So, there's obviously going to be some folks that I don't know anybody, or I don't have any of those resources, or there's nobody around right now. So that, you can't get that done with everybody, but it sets it up for it's the best idea to have some support for that person on their way. So assessment, and what assessment really is triage. And what we're doing is that we're looking at this person through the lens of Maslow's pyramid. Some of you have read Maslow's pyramid before, but we're always kind of looking at that gradation of, is this person in the basement of Maslow's pyramid? And if they're in the basement of Maslow's pyramid, we want to help them. We want to activate some from indigenous community support services to get them out of the basement. And what does that mean? What is the basement of Maslow's pyramid? Well, the bottom floor is safety. Is that if a person is in real danger, then we need to do something to get them out of danger. Because the most important part of this is rescuer safety. So, you're not going to be in contexts where you are in danger. You don't go into those situations. You just don't help people unless you are a trained search and rescue. You do not go into situations. I have a friend of mine who is an EMT, and she says that nobody ever died because they didn't get a chance to tell their story. So we're way down the food chain in terms of reporting a disaster, way down there. And the incident command is going to take care of safety before it takes care of anything else. So we want to make sure, A, that we're safe. And then we're looking, as I said, through Maslow's pyramid in the assessment process, and we're going stepwise through that. Is the person safe? If not, what do I need to do to activate resources to keep this person safe for the next 24 hours? Do they have food, clothing, and shelter? If they don't have food, clothing, and shelter, we want to make sure that we're activating those resources for them. If they do not have support, if there's nobody in their life, then we want to make sure that we're doing something about activating some way of support, even if it's with the other folks that are survivors here. Is that love and belonging is the third floor of Maslow's pyramid, but it's still in the deficiency needs. People don't recover when they are in just total isolation. They need support. So those are the things that we're looking at. And then we're looking at, physical symptoms. Is this person bleeding, obviously? If they're bleeding, we want to make sure that they get EMT services. It's just that you want to make sure that if you're seeing anything that is physiologically anomalous, anything that's not right, that it's better to err on the side of caution, especially after a critical incident. You want to just, anything that looks a little bit weird, get them to see an EMT, and the EMT will clear them. If they're on site, say, hey, can you take a look at this person? And they will resist it and say, well, just let them look you over. To make sure, because you just don't know what could have happened. So that's really the assessment process. I call it assessment because CTSR, SER doesn't spell anything, but it's really triage. That's what you're doing, is that you're doing a physiological and psychological triage with that person.